I am Mir Baseerat with another episode of What's Brewing. The Russia-Ukrainian war is an ongoing war, first and foremost, involving Russia, pro-Russian forces in Belarus on one side, and Ukraine and its international faction on the other. Seems like a perfect script for next Marvel's movie. After 2 weeks of gruesome war, Russia called in for temporary peace in between, which lasted for merely 2 days. What has Ukraine gained in these 2 weeks, and what has Russia lost? Apart from sympathy, Ukraine has gained support from various international countries. And Russia, well, they have lost many associates. Here, most of the European countries, along with the US, have imposed sanctions on Russia. Is Russia already paying a price for its aggression? What is the sanction, and how it will affect Russia? That's what I'll bring to you in this episode of What's Brewing. Sanctions are blowing holes in the Russian economy. World powers, led by the US, have imposed curbs ranging from an overseas asset freeze on the Russian central bank to a ban on buying sparkling wine from a bottler in Crimea. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that allies were now discussing a ban on Russian exports of crude oil. The ruble has collapsed, bond default risk has spiked, the Moscow Stock Exchange has closed, and Russian oil trades at ever deeper discounts to Brent. The barbaric invasion of Ukraine fully justifies economic warfare against Russia. Financial sanctions are sometimes dismissed as token gestures. In this case, they are doing real damage and could trigger a recession. In the process, some fallacies about those curbs have become clear. This should help Western banks and businesses stay out of trouble and developed democracies to deploy new sanctions, which should include the embargo on Russian energy exports more effectively. The main fallacy is that sanctions can be targeted at Vladimir Putin and his inner circle of cronies and related businesses. The inner circle is becoming too expensive to mirror the description. In the past fortnight, the grouping led by the US, Europe and UK added the names of about 400 Russian to sanctioned list, according to WorldCheck, a risk intelligence database. The tally of newly sanctioned organizations, most of which are companies, is more than 600. Numerous Russian oligarchs and their companies have been left out, including one particularly glaring example in the UK. But any businesses controlled by sanctioned group are by definition sanctioned too. Business in corrupt former Soviet regime is partly organized under the Krisha principle. The big man in the district typically pays a regional boss to shelter under his metaphorical roof or Krisha. The regional boss then remits to a national oligarch who pays protection money to a powerful politician. The dictator sits at the apex of the overlapping groups. This is a helpfully flexible system for sanctions dodging regimes. When sanctions prevent one oligarch or organization from dealing with the West for the godfather, an unsanctioned stooge may be deputed to do so instead. This is how the Russian central bank could dispose of sum of rupees $160 billion in sanctioned gold. Banks in the city of London and New York cannot be sure who they are dealing with. The result, says the boss of one large city institution, is that a lot of organizations are simply redlining all Russians. This is the famed chilling effect whereby most businesses and business people in a country are cold-shouldered alongside named peers. The chilling effect is particularly icy in the sphere of payments because international banks are rightly terrified of the US authorities. Thanks to their extraterritorial reach and the dominance of the dollar as an international currency, the US prosecutors and regulators can make things very hot for banks that participate in sanctions dodging. Because of this, some big international banks are quietly shunning Russian peers who remained on international payments messaging system swift after the expulsion of 7 big lenders, including VTB, VEB and Otkritie. This would make it harder for Gazprom Bank, the banking arm of gas giant Gazprom and Russia's third largest lender, to receive payments. Russian slaughter of Ukrainian civilians obliges the West to intensify sanctions. The US is right to threaten Russia with an oil export embargo. This is better than simply imposing a stoppage of all energy exports without warning. The case is different to freezing the assets of the Russian central bank. The Allies needed to move on this immediately to reduce Russia's capacity to make precautionary sales of its assets. Gold and bonds represent a stock of value. Oil exports, in contrast, are a continuous flow of income. The West can impose sanctions if Russia refuses to de escalate and negotiate. Game theory points to offering Putin exit ramps, as Sven Bedhart of German political consultancy Geoeconomica points out. Sanctions hawks disagree, but this is always the sensible way to deal with an enemy that you hope to force into retreat rather than destroy. Tactics are needed to win financial wars as well as the military kind. Thank you and goodbye.